Welcome to UNCAGED, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today, we are speaking with Gloria Blackwell. Hey, Gloria, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm very, very well, Gloria. I'm excited to talk to you. Gloria is the CEO of the American Association of University Women, probably more broadly known as the AAUW. And the AAUW has actually been around for a while, as I'm sure Gloria will tell you. It advances gender equity for women and girls through research, education, and advocacy. It's a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. It has over 170,000 members, as well as 1,000 local branches and more than 800 college and university members. And so we'll delve more into the AAUW in a second. But before we get there, Gloria, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
All right. Well, I think an important thing to know about me is that I was a first generation college student. And so I grew up with the notion that I was going to be, someone who went to college, even though neither of my parents did. And so education was always very important. My pathway towards this career in gender equity really started actually when I was back in middle school. I had this great French teacher when I was in middle school, and I fell in love with the French language, learned how to speak French, and had the opportunity to travel abroad and visit France. And it really sort of sparked this lifelong love of travel and languages and learning about other cultures. And so, starting from that middle school French class, I then moved into higher education, where I got my degree in international relations and then a master's in international education, and then pursued a career where I focused on the importance of education, particularly for women and girls. I saw it as my lifelong, not just my aspiration, but also my challenge to have that opportunity.
And Gloria, I noticed that you've been at the American Association of University Women for a while, so you've seen the organization evolve, and now you're the big boss. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on now.
We are working on, there's so many exciting things that we're working on. This fall, we're launching the third year of our Women's Economic Security Program, an empowerment program, which really consists of a suite of programs that are focused on ensuring that women and girls reach their full potential. At the sort of centerpiece of it is our award-winning salary negotiation program, Work Smart for those in the workplace and Start Smart for those who are in college, which really trains women with the skills that they need to negotiate a fair salary and benefits. We're also doing the second year of our pilot program on financial literacy and education for women. We've been doing a great deal of work with historically Black colleges and universities and minority serving institutions. So back to school really is important for us because we're heading back to school. And we're also having great opportunities in expanding our work in science, technology, engineering, and math, making sure that girls understand the potential of pursuing a STEM career in higher education, as well as gearing up for our 35th National Conference for College Women Student Leaders.
Wow.
So back to school has deep meaning for AAUW because we're really pulling out all the stops to ensure that we're having an impact on women in their careers and in education.
That's great. The back to school thing really hits me this year because I have a freshman in college I just dropped off. So I had to deal with all of that joy and sadness and happiness at the same time. It's always a process.
Well, I can relate. I've done it 3 times, and my youngest is entering her senior year. So we're very excited. Yeah, senior year of college.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's so exciting. So, I mean, it's amazing. Your organization touches on such important issues. You talked about STEM, you talked about finance, you really talked about almost all the issues that are relating to women these days. Tell us a little bit about where you feel we are in some of these topics and what the landscape looks like.
So it's really important that we have continued to focus on some very specific areas. We focus on getting more women in STEM in the workplace and getting more girls to study STEM in college because occupational segregation continues to be a thing. It's a challenge. It's an impediment for women's career growth. We know that STEM careers are among the highest paying careers, and if women continue to be left out of them, that has an impact on their long-term, financial sustainability as well as their careers.
Yeah.
It's also something that contributes to the gender pay gap, which, at this point rests at 83 cents on average that a woman makes compared to a white man. And so the pay gap from leaving school throughout women's careers also has a detrimental impact on their ability to take care of their basic expenses and then
Right.
often end up in retirement with less money to live on. And it also clearly provides less money for women to pay down things like student loans. We're certainly excited that the administration, canceled student debt and made the announcement last week.
That was exciting.
Absolutely. But AAUW also released a report, survey last week that indicated so much of what we already know, that women bear the brunt of the student loan debt. We carry 2/3 of that debt and have a longer term in paying it back. And so we are working on issues that really have an impact on the day-to-day life of women's ability to be successful in their careers, to provide for themselves, and obviously to provide for their families. And
So, Gloria, I mean, you've been part and a champion for AAUW for many years. If you go back a decade, let's say, what were the biggest challenges then compared to now?
I would say definitely some of these issues that we thought we would have worked ourselves out of a job by now are still persistent. And so a decade ago, we were working very hard on the pay gap. And, here we are a decade later, still focusing on the pay gap. And because of the pandemic, it has widened, even more for women of color. So that really is a challenge.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. I mean, the pandemic has been an interesting moment, and being a leader of an organization through that time must have been quite a challenge. Tell me a little bit about your experience with the pandemic and perhaps some of the insights or potentially kind of some of the changes that you guys have implemented since then.
So, stepping into the leadership of an organization during the pandemic is a little bit of, just being committed and just being a little bit of what have you gotten yourself into, right? Because the pandemic really demonstrated that a major barrier to women in the workplace is that our workplaces are still incredibly outdated. They are set up in a way that doesn't actually resonate or relate to the way families actually operate today, right? It's not 1950. It's not just that the dad goes off to work and the woman stays home and takes care of the domestic responsibilities. And we know that was never the case for many families. But what we found, certainly in the workplace, is that we have had to adapt, and we had to adapt incredibly quickly, right? AAUW adapted as an organization to ensuring, that we adopted, a work at home or a hybrid way to really take into account that we were going through these unprecedented times. And we hoped, as we were going through the pandemic, that this would be a catalyst for, across employers, that they could see that the way that the workplace was set up was certainly not working for mothers, certainly not working for women in general, and to create a space where women could actually achieve their goals. And so there has certainly been some good that has come through the pandemic with the realization and people and employers acting on this to provide more equitable workplaces for women, for caregivers and their families. But I think that it has been hampered in so many ways as well because of the lack of real intentional action around so many of the issues that continue to hold women back in their careers. And so,
Yeah.
we're definitely hopeful that progress is going to take place, but it's not going to happen on its own. It needs to be intentional. And employers also need to think about the bias, the discrimination, the sexism, the racism, these systemic issues that exist and permeate so many of the workplaces that women are subjected to. And
Yeah.
so, we need more women leaders in our
Yeah.
workplaces, just to be frank, to really have a better sense of how to address so many of these issues. So that pandemic light that is shining above everyone's head and showing exactly everything that was wrong with our workplaces has been great. But now people actually have to be intentional about looking at solutions to actually solve them.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating moment. And to think becoming a leader during that time must have been quite a challenge. I can
Yes.
only imagine. So kudos to you. But I find it also quite interesting because we're at this moment now going into the back part of 2022 where I find a lot of organizations seem to be pushing to return in full to the office in some form or fashion. Others of our customers are finding themselves saying, no, 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 we're going to stay true to the hybrid model. And it's an interesting one when you put the lens of women on this, because in many respects, I'm surprised that more organizations don't see this as a way to almost usher in a more open, more equal structure. Because of obviously, I think in many respects, the hybrid model was quite good for many women. I know that other women that, I just speak out about our team, found themselves certainly shouldering too much of the workload at home all of a sudden during the pandemic. So there's probably a balance there, but lots of learning that I hope doesn't get lost, right? I mean, it's one of those moments where I hope we don't just kind of make a radical decision just to return to the office and return to the office is important though. I mean, there's this kind of mentoring element, I think, that is somehow lost right now. I don't know if that's something that comes up for you, but it is something that when I think about young executives as they come up, I don't think they're getting exposed to as many opportunities to interact with kind of senior colleagues in some form or fashion. And that could be, I think, interestingly, it'll cause kind of a shift in career paths.
I would agree. And I think that, we have we had a telework policy before the pandemic. And, we certainly revised it during the pandemic when we had a stay at home policy for a couple of years. And so we have been returning to the office over the past 6 months. We will continue to have a hybrid policy. And I think we're acknowledging the fact that, there was a lot that was lost during the pandemic where, leaders and supervisors and everyone on our team, didn't have the capacity or the opportunity to build those relationships and to have that in-person opportunity. But we've also understood just how beneficial it was for individuals, whether you were a mother or whether you were a caregiver to a family member, how people were able to be productive, how our mission moved forward during the pandemic. Just, probably because the hybrid was an enhancement that really allowed people
Yeah.
to work, in the best ways that they could and ways that they were comfortable.
Yeah.
And, we brought on more than a dozen staff during the
Yeah.
pandemic, and people made decisions about priorities in their lives as well. But
Yeah.
I think also it really taught us that this, the way in which we have moved forward, as a society, sometimes it happens in these fits and starts. And so what we also realized, I think, during the pandemic is that, we're not going back. We're not going back to a workplace that was not supportive
Yeah.
of people's individual needs as well as the needs of the organization, and that people understand that there really isn't a kind of a one size fits all model
Yeah.
that's really going to work for everyone. And so as more people come back and we create a stronger structure for issues like you mentioned of professional development and mentoring and having some face time
Yeah.
across the organization and deeper collaboration, those are all things that I can certainly testify to in my own
Yeah.
career that were really important when you're talking about building a strong organizational culture. And so that spark of creativity and innovation as well is really important. So we're definitely focused also on just making sure that we're creating an atmosphere where people can do their best work. And we've clearly already proven that it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that means 5 days a week in the office for sure.
Well said. Well said, Gloria. So, I mean, here we are looking on the back half of 2022 already, Gloria. Oh my God. Oh my God. Everyone's going back to school. Tell me a little bit about what's on the docket for the rest of the year and the near future.
So it's back to school it's back to school for AAUW. This year, we are actually hosting our largest group of fellows and grantees. We awarded $6 million to 320 scholars and community-based organizations. So they're geared up and on hundreds of campuses across the country. We are all prepped and getting ready for a National Conference of College Women Student Leaders, which is going to be our 36th year. We hold it at the University of Maryland at College Park. We're definitely on track to get prepped and started with our historically Black colleges and universities and our minority serving institutions, bringing their students the skills to increase their economic security as they enter into the workplace. We're continuing our work in ensuring that women and girls are going to be more fully represented in science, technology, engineering, and math. We're going to be buckling down this fall in getting out the vote, and ensuring that our members at the grassroots are out there making sure that they're in touch with their legislators at the local, state, and the federal level to ensure that the policies that are going to be enacted are going to benefit greater equity for women and girls. So our plate is pretty full. And of course,
I mean, that's an understatement.
Full.
Just getting pretty full.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Gloria, thank you so much for telling us about AAUW. I mean, if someone wanted to learn more or get involved with the organization, where's the best place to connect with you?
You can check out our wonderful website, aauw.org, and learn about everything that I just mentioned: our salary negotiation, our fellowships, our financial literacy, how you can become a 2-minute activist and have an impact on all of these issues that are going to create a better and more equitable society for women and girls.
Excellent. Well, Gloria, thank you so much for being on the UNCAGED show. We've been speaking with Gloria Blackwell. She is the CEO of the American Association of University Women, otherwise known as the AAUW. The AAUW advances gender equity for women and girls through research, education, and advocacy. We've been talking about a lot of the work that the organization is doing in terms of pushing and offering opportunities for women to get more involved with STEM. We've been talking about financial literacy, financial improvement, which are key issues for everyone, and many, many other issues about maybe even getting out the vote in the fall here as well. The AAUW is a big organization, 170,000 members. You probably have it at your university or one of your local branches. Gloria, thank you so much for being on the show today, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Cheers.